Can you imagine a story that introduces over 10 characters right off the bat? Each one is important and incredibly powerful, and all with complex relationships. You might think that sounds like a chaotic mess, but surprisingly, it pulls off pretty well. Hey, it's Ellie. Today we'll dive into Fate Strange Fake to explore how to write a compelling opening for an ensemble piece. One of the biggest challenges when writing an ensemble opening is connecting seemingly unrelated characters in just 10 minutes. Strange Fake provides a great template, a hot potato game centered around one theme. This is Hot Potato, players passing a ball around. The first player holding the ball is our main character Ayaka, who steps outside and shows her command spell. Right away, the command spell shows up on Fadius' screen, revealing he's been watching Ayaka all along. Then his assistant shows him a crow with a weird scar. This moment passes the ball to Cloaca's family, who also have similar scars on their necks, making the audience connect these two events. Then Fadius tosses the conversation to Orlando, leading to a chat between Orlando and Castor. This way of weaving connected topics to introduce characters is just like playing hot potato, allowing the topics to be passed on to different characters. It not only presents the characters, but also helps the audience understand their relationships and areas of interest or conflict easily. Before we know it, a network of the story's world forms in our minds. But if this hot potato game were limited to just that, viewers might find the connections between these character groups to be superficial. However, upon closer inspection, you will see they are all tied to certain themes. The war in the desert, command spells, servant, these connections subtly place them all in the same world, the world that must face the Holy Grail War, which is also the center of the hot potato game. At this point, fans familiar with the Fate series might wonder about other pairs of masters and servants who haven't had much screen time. However, earlier discussions have already introduced them. Ayaka, Fadius, and Orlando all mention the desert events. Initially, Fadius observes a massive pit in the desert, while a shopkeeper complains about the fighter jets in desert disturbing his business. At this stage, the desert battle hasn't caught the audience's attention yet, but soon enough, Fadius and Orlando brings up the situation again. Viewers who've seen the prequels know that this massive pit was created by Gilgamesh and Enkidu. This is the charm of indirect description. It avoids overwhelming the audience with too many characters all at once, keeping them from feeling pressured while still giving them a sense of who these characters are and what they've done. Plus, that massive pit serves another purpose. It hints at the power of Gilgamesh and Enkidu while also injecting some tension into the story. After all, they'll all become the enemies for the main characters. Again, the hot potato game centered around one theme is an incredibly effective template for ensemble storytelling. It allows for quick character introductions, clarifies the stakes, and highlights the shared events, quickly immersing the audience in the story. One major downside of ensemble pieces is that the audience often struggle to remember characters. Fate Strange Fake tackles this by giving each character a memorable trait, amplifying their personalities to extremes. At first, Fadius seems pretty unremarkable, but soon the author unveils his darker side by revealing his story of backstabbing his mentor. Orlando, on the other hand, brings contrast. He embodies the stereotypical cop character, but Castor breaks his rigidity, pulling out expressions we wouldn't usually associate with him. The classic frenemies dynamic really comes alive here. Ayaka is one of the more restrained characters. Honestly, among this distinctive cast, he might come off as a bit dull, but the author cleverly connects her to the most eye-catching character, Richard. Richard easily grabs the audience's attention and gains favor with certain viewers. The plot establishes that without Ayaka, Richard would essentially vanish, making the audience empathize with Ayaka and gradually accept her despite her less flashy traits. The other characters like domineering Gilgamesh, the seductive Francesca, and the seemingly naive yet powerful Vlad all have their unique characteristic. But here's the catch. With such a strong and distinctive cast, we might almost forget that Ayaka and Richard are the main characters. So how do we make sure they stand out? This brings us to our third point: spotlight protagonist. While the supporting characters each have their strengths, they also share some common traits. Our main characters, though, break these molds, and that's what sets them apart. In Fate Strange Fate, the author uses two main differences to highlight the main characters. First is their motivation. Tini fights to protect her homeland, while Orlando and Fabius are determined to set up the Holy Grail War. Francesca wants to summon Arturia. Each character has their hidden agendas and is carefully plotting their moves. Then there's our main character Ayaka, who is the only one without a clear purpose. When asked, "What's your purpose in coming to this city?" she replies, "I don't know." This "I don't know" reflects her passive attitude and contrasts sharply with the more driven characters. But it also positions her as the most potentially interesting character. The audience will want to see how she figures out her meaning of her presence and transforms from a helpless person into someone who can retaliate and surpass others. This could generate strong empathy from viewers. The second distinguished factor is the tone of their personalities. While all the other characters have their quirks, they can be grouped under one overarching tone, darkness. So when Richard enters the scene, the pure courage radiates from him just like a spotlight, making him stand out among the darker characters. And to emphasize the main character's uniqueness, the author has them consistently disrupt the plans of other characters. For example, when Francesca aims to summon Arturia, Richard's presence directly undermines her strategy. Orlando and Fabius are desperately trying to conceal the Holy Grail War, and Richard's grand display and speech put everything into chaos. The main characters effectively throw a wrench in the expectations of the secondary characters while paving their own path. This gap between what others expect and what they actually do, along with their independent methods, really sets the main characters apart from the supporting cast. But in the end, I want to say that Fate Strange Fate is still a work that relies on long-time fans, as its world can be a bit complex for new viewers. However, the techniques mentioned above still work well for brand new ensemble story and helped me better immerse myself in this tale, so I believe they are worth sharing. Thank you for watching this video and I'll see you in the next one.